Hey everyone, I am so excited to have gotten Figrin D'an in the mail today. I got this from an eBay seller that was selling these at a very reasonable price. I think they were a local comic shop that managed to get a few cases of these because there were a lot available. They've sold out now, but hopefully these will be in your hands soon. Let's start by comparing him to the Nayland Cheel. If you look at the mural, it's really cool how the two connect, and you have this sort of archway from the cantina that connects across the two boxes. I thought that was really cool. If you haven't seen my Nayland Cheel review, that is on my channel, and I'll have it linked in the card at the end of the video. Let's get him set up here. Oh, before I do that, I did do a dark wash and a bit of metallic dry brushing on the instrument here, just to bring out the quality a little bit and make it look a little bit more premium. I did the same for the other two instruments that comes with him, and I will show you at the end of the video exactly how I did that. So if you'd like to learn, stay tuned for that, but let's get into the man himself, Figrin D'an. This is the exact same sculpt as the Nayland Cheel, but this offers you a little bit of a cheaper option than buying 6 deluxe figures or 7 deluxe figures. First impressions, I'm actually really impressed with how the instruments look compared to the Nayland Cheel. These actually do have a little bit of paintwork on them. You could see the silver and gold details on this one. And then this one has a bit of a golder middle section to it. It's harder to see on video, but it looks great in person. And then this one has some dry brushing across the whole thing to make it look very metallic and have those silvers pop out a little bit. So those are the 3 instruments all together. We are all about to have a lot of these instruments lying around. Let's compare him to Nayland Cheel. Again, it's the same figure. I did do a matte coat on the shirt and pants on the left, so you can see how it's a little bit less shiny than the one on the right, even on the boots, but otherwise it's the same exact figure. The Figrin D'an only comes with 1 set of hands, which do hold all 3 instruments that he comes with, but you can see if you pop it off, it's the same exact system as on Nayland Cheel, which it should be because the hands are all meant to be interchangeable between the 2 figures. So unfortunately, it is a bit tricky to get this into place. He doesn't have butterfly joints at the shoulders, so it's hard to get his hands into a good position where he can kind of grasp it, but it did take me about a minute, but once I got it into place, it seemed to be holding just fine. And the little mouthpiece is pretty flexible, so you can kind of tweak it in there so it sits right in there. Now normally I would edit out this part of the video and just cut to the chase, but I wanted to kind of demonstrate the difficulty in getting this instrument into position. I think some butterfly joints in the shoulders would have made this process a lot easier. The mouthpiece is very flexible, you can see that there, so that kind of helps and hurts at the same time when trying to get it into position. So I apologize if this part is pretty boring, but I think it's an important part of reviewing the figure, and you guys have been asking for longer videos anyway, so there we go, we've got it in. Again, not too bad, just took a few seconds. There's other action figures that are way more frustrating, but let's take a look at the 3rd instrument now. Now this one is the most frustrating of the 3 because it is so much smaller. I think there may be other hands in the Nayland Cheel box that would make this work a little bit better, but at the same time, I didn't want to review the figure with anything that doesn't actually come with it in the box. So once you've got all 6 of these, if you're going for the full set, then you can play around with mixing and matching hands to see what works best, because like the instruments that are in the back there, you don't really need the exact hands that they come with to hold certain parts of it, especially the drum kit. And so let's take a look at them together one more time. And actually before we move on to the dry brushing, I wanted to show you guys something that I just finished working on for my Patreon. This is a cantina bandstand that is going to accommodate all 6 or 7 members. If you would like to 3D print this yourself, the files will be available on my Patreon sometime in July, and I will have that linked in the description below. I did have to take a lot of creative liberties here because we don't really get a clear shot of this in the film, but I hope you like it. So let's get them into place here, and then I want to go ahead and show you guys how I weathered the instruments. So you can see right out of the box for Nayland Cheel, the instruments are very plain. You know, they just look like casted plastic, nothing too exciting, no life to them really. So I wanted to use this Vallejo model wash. This is from Amazon. It was like $6. Just really cake it on. I use this really dirty brush, and you can see how instantly it starts really filling the cracks where the details are, and the elevated areas stay a little bit lighter, but we're gonna work on that a little bit further. I'll show you in detail how I do this first one without cutting, but then we'll skip through the other 2 just to make the video a little bit quicker. But I wanted you guys to kind of see exactly what this does and what it should be doing when you're working on it. And I'm actually not an expert on this. I've only been using this stuff for a couple of weeks, but I'll just show you exactly what I do. It's not necessarily the right way to do it, but it's the way I do it, and I'm pretty happy with the results. So we'll set that aside and we'll actually let that dry, and we'll move on to this one. And you know what, I'll let this one go unedited as well. Why not? You can end the video early if you're not interested in this part. If I were working on a figure instead of a prop, I would be a little bit more careful with where the liquid is sitting exactly, because it can stain certain areas where you don't want it to stain as much. But in this case, I really didn't mind getting everything really dark and letting it really just sit in there. So, you know, this is Tatooine. This stuff should be pretty grimy and oily. It's, you know, we're going to assume it's quite old. So we're just going to really layer this on and not worry too much about overdoing it, because we can always take it down a little bit later. And when you're weathering a figure or something like this, and you do get it into areas, you could see how it almost looks like I'm just caking black paint directly onto this. But watch once it dries how much it lightens up. You could even see it there in the moment as you just give it a couple seconds and it kind of falls into those cracks and leaves that black pigment in those cracks, but still stays lighter on the surfaces. And so this is where I ended up. This is how everything is gonna sit for just a bit, but actually I do wanna take a little bit of that water or whatever the liquid is that's still on there and soften it out a little bit, so, or just dry it up a little bit. So I'm kind of dipping it into the cracks and stuff, soaking it up onto the brush, and then dabbing the brush on the paper towel just to lighten it up a little bit. And you can see it also gives like a nice little bit of a texture, adds a little bit of variety to the texture that is on the surface. And this will lead us into dry brushing, which is my favorite part, but we're gonna let this sit for about a half hour at least in order to really dry. And I covered this in my last video with Reva, but I wanna show you again how I get rid of the glossy finish on my figure. So normally I'm doing this to the face, but in this case I'm gonna do it to the body because he's wearing this black shirt and it looks very glossy and silky, and I think it should look more like cloth. So I'm gonna mask just the head and give it a couple sprays with the Mr. Hobby spray. I will have that linked in the description below along with the dark wash that I used. And now you can see he's a little bit less shiny. I could go for an extra coat, but let's jump right into the dry brushing here. So you can see how the dark wash that we left out for a little while, we can see how that dried, and it really isn't as dark or as scary as it looked when we were caking it on before. But I'm gonna use just one little drop of this Vallejo silver metallic paint. I'm sorry for the focus going in and out as my hands go in. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some on the brush. I'm going to immediately scrape a lot of it off, and then I'm going to start brushing it onto a paper towel until almost nothing is left on the brush. Paper towels are great because they have that texture, but you can see once we brush it onto black how visible it actually is. So we want to get it really back down to a point where there's almost nothing on the brush. So let's test it on the black and see what is left here. It's a pretty good amount where you have to really push hard in order to get it to show. So we're going to start lightly brushing across the raised surfaces, and you can see how the raised surfaces immediately take the lighter color without really going into the dark. And that gives the effect of worn metal, because metal is going to wear down on the parts that are raised before the more inset parts, because those are going to be getting the most contact with, you know, with your hands or whatever the piece may be. That's where it's going to peel back first. So you can see how effective this really simple technique is at bringing out detail. I like to lightly brush it along the corners and the edges just a little bit. And you can see wherever I brush it, really, it's almost like magic. It just goes exactly where you want it. Less is more here. You can always go back and add more, and the more gradual of a process this is, the more realistic it's going to look. If you go right away and it's really shiny, you're going to overdo it. So you really want to barely be seeing anything happening. So this is almost even a little too much, but this is the amount I kind of like to work with. So you can see exactly how it grabs the edges. It just livens things up so effectively. It's really one of my favorite tricks I've ever discovered. I mean, and I didn't discover it myself. It's quite a common technique in painting, but once I learned this, my whole life changed. That's also very dramatic. My life as it pertains to finishing action figures, we'll say that. So here's the finished result. You can see the details. Let's actually take, let me do a little bit more right there. And now I'm moving to a little bit more of a flatter light source so we can see exactly what this does. And you can just see it, like, this stuff feels real now compared to how it looked before. Like, it's just such a simple improvement. but it really does make such a big difference in how the finished product looks. So let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoyed learning a little bit about dark washing and dry brushing today. Otherwise, I'll keep the reviews a little bit more simple in the future. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.